All right, welcome back to another video. My name is Ian Major. I'm an entrepreneur, Bitcoin pleb, and all-around raging capitalist. And in today's video, I'm very excited to be bringing you something that a lot of you have been requesting, and this is a continuation of the Bitcoin node series that I've recently kicked off with a video around why would one want to run a Bitcoin node. And so I'll provide a link to that video in the description down below if you haven't seen it. But in today's video, I'm going to jump right into what I believe to be the easiest way to set up a Bitcoin full node in 2021. That includes a Lightning node, and that is through a combination of Umbrel for the software stack and CryptoCloaks for the hardware parts and assembly. Notice I said easiest. I did not say cheapest. I did not say most fulfilling for someone who really wants to get their hands dirty with the assembly. And so be sure to stay tuned for future videos where I'll go through some of the other methods by which you might want to do this. But even in today's video, I'll provide commentary as we go along of the trade-offs that we're making at each stage so that you have the full picture, even if you were to just watch this single video. For those of you returning to the channel, welcome back, my friends. As always, it is great to have you. And for those new to the channel, and I know there are many of you, about 85% of you right now watching are not currently subscribed. And so if you like this content, I invite you to consider subscribing. I put out all manner of content Bitcoin related, tutorials, wallets, nodes, latest news, events, you name it, everything to help you on your quest to become financially sovereign, which is what this channel is all about. I'm also going to be today putting an affiliate link in the description down below for CryptoCloaks, which is something they've recently launched. And so if you are so keen on getting anything from CryptoCloaks, I invite you to use that link. It really does help out the channel and allows me to devote ever more time to putting this content out and making the content better and better. With all of that out of the way, though, let's go ahead and jump into the meat for today's video. All right, before we jump into each of these pieces, I just want to comment at a high level about both Umbrel and CryptoCloaks. So Umbrel is essentially the software stack that you'll be running on your Bitcoin node that allows you to interface with the Bitcoin blockchain in a very kind of user-friendly way. I've been really impressed at just the amount that they're releasing. They just announced their 0.4 version, in which they, are unleashing a number of different apps, and they're really kind of positioning an Umbrel node to be this kind of personal server, which, in addition to being a Bitcoin node, which has its trade-offs, but suffice it to say on net, I think they're just putting out an insane amount of features and quality development, which is really impressive to see. For you purists out there, I do want to comment that they are not pure FOSS, i.e. free and open source software. They actually just recently went to a Polyform non-commercial 1.0 license. What does that mean? That means that all the source code is readable. It's available on GitHub. You can go and look at it now. You can not only go and look at it, you could also fork it and use it for your own personal reasons. However, the stipulation is that you can't go and use it for a commercial purpose. And honestly, I think that's pretty darn good. There's going to be purists out here who disagree with me, but that is okay. And so net, I really think there's no one out there that's doing more impressive work in the kind of node implementation space than Umbrel. That is my 2 cents. And again, keep in mind, this is both a Bitcoin node and a Lightning node in one, as we will talk about. On the other side, CryptoCloaks. So CryptoCloaks got their start using a 3D printer to create cool Bitcoin swag. The honey badger and grenade in the background there are examples of that. And indeed, the node casing, which I will talk through later in this video, is a good example of that as well. And they basically offer a service where you can, you can buy a sort of plug and play already assembled, within a node casing node that you can basically plug into the wall and get ready to go. So that's what I'm going to be talking about as part of today. Let's now look at each of those components in more detail and how to do it. All right, so even if you end up going this route that's outlined in this video, I think it's still very important to understand what is going into this. And so I want to just spend a moment going through what that looks like. I'm here on getumbrel.com. So this is where you would download Umbrel if you are going the route of manual assembly. And you can see it's got some explanation of what a node is. It's got all sorts of impressive integrations. But what I want to do is come down and look at the recommended hardware. Okay, and I want to just comment on these different pieces so you know the components that are going into your node, regardless of whether you go the manual assembly or the plug and play CryptoCloaks route, which I will show in just a moment. This is also nice because each of these is linked directly to Amazon, so you could kind of click on each of these and chuck it, right in your basket. First, it starts with a Raspberry Pi 4, and so this is a single board computer. You've probably, even if you're not familiar with nodes very much, you've probably seen a little image of these guys floating around. This is sort of the brains of the operation. This is the computer that is going to be running the Umbrel software. Okay, and so it's got a variety of different connection points for power, for connecting to, putting a micro SD card in, Ethernet, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is the kind of brains of the operation. As we'll discuss in the CryptoCloaks portion, there are 4 gig and 8 gig RAM options. 4 is enough, but some people want to just kind of do the biggest and baddest of everything, and so you could go 8 gigs in that case, and you'll sort of see some of the requirements listed here. Then you've got a 1 terabyte drive. So this is essentially your drive where you're going to be storing the actual data. So keep in mind that the Bitcoin blockchain, as of this current making, is probably around 355 gigs or so, right? Every transaction that's ever happened within Bitcoin, the blockchain, as it were, is of a size of about 355 or so gigs. And so a 1 terabyte drive gives you plenty of space for that to grow. That's going to last years to come. But there are bigger options. Some people want to YOLO and do 2 terabytes just to really, really future-proof for the growth of the Bitcoin blockchain over time. But 1 terabyte is perfectly fine. And so essentially what will happen is the computer, i.e. the Raspberry Pi, will get connected to the drive, which is where the data is actually going to be stored. They recommend an enclosure for the drive, which is pretty cheap. And then the micro SD card is what you're going to install the Umbrel software on. So you've got a little micro SD card, at least 16 gigs. That gets the Umbrel software installed, and that gets plugged into the Raspberry Pi for the Raspberry Pi to run that software. Lastly, you've got a power cable, power supply to plug everything in, and then you've got an Ethernet cable to directly connect your node to your internet router. And so implied in that is you need an internet router, ideally with high-speed internet, that has an Ethernet port, because this will need to get connected directly. And I will show you an image of what that looks like in my case in just a moment. And then finally, they chuck a case on here for the whole thing, or for the Raspberry Pi rather, which, depending on your setup, can also be a really nice thing. There are other bells and whistles you could toss onto here. There's little fans that will help keep the device. This thing is not an ASIC miner, right? So it's not going to be sucking up much energy. It's not going to be, doing an awful lot, but it is going to be running at all times. And so a little fan can be recommended just to help keep everything cool. But those are the components, right? And so again, you could literally click on each of these, go to Amazon, buy it, and then in terms of how to install, this will walk you through. Let me go back to the front. This will walk you through the steps. So you've purchased everything. You download the Umbrel operating system on your computer, and then you go through a process to flash that software onto the micro SD card. right? And then the micro SD card comes over into the Pi. You connect the SSD to the Pi, power it up, connect it to the router, and essentially away you go. And then you'll be able to connect to your Umbrel node, which again, I will show you a picture of. So that was not intended to give you like the very detailed version of how you would manually assemble it, but to give you a flavor of what it entails so you can make an informed decision as to whether you want to go down that route yourself. And as I mentioned, I think it's really, really important to just have at least a high level understanding of the components that are going into this and what they are doing. Now, let's say that you watched all that and you're like, okay, fine, I have that understanding, but you told me this was the easiest method, and so when does that come in? Well, I have good news. So we'll go over to CryptoCloaks now. And so this is simply CryptoCloaks.com. Again, I will link this in the description as well. And so what we want to do is come over to Shop and come down to Cases and Nodes. You'll see they have a lot of other cool swag as well, other merchandise, clothing. You can get yourself one of the Bitcoin grenades, whatever. But let's go over to Cases and Nodes. And you'll see that there are a variety of shells. So this is sort of part of where CryptoCloaks started, 3D printing shells for your node. And they've got them in a variety of models, the Lightning shell, the Triton shell, pretty cool stuff here. But what we want to do is come down to the build a node option. And so you can see the price point here, right? This is an all-in price for all the different gear we just talked about, plus the assembly, plus the downloading of the software onto the equipment. And so if, for example, you were to go here and grab all of this off of Amazon, you would probably be able to save maybe 200, maybe a little bit less. But like that's what you're paying for in order to get this fully assembled, ready to roll. Okay, so that's the trade-off. But let's go ahead and jump into build a node. And you'll see it is pretty darn simple. There's a couple simple drop downs. And so let's go through each of these. For the Raspberry Pi 4, you'll see there's the RAM choice, as I was alluding to earlier. There's the 4 gig or the 8 gig. 4 gig is the minimum requirement, and so you're fine going with that. Some people will want to soup it up to an 8 gig. This could be interesting given the direction Umbrel seems to be taking with providing broader set of applications for your node around like becoming this personal server, etc. And so I would invite you to check out the post from their Twitter that I linked. That could be an interesting reason that you might want to go big. The software is where you'll then choose Umbrel. Now you'll notice that there are a couple other implementations here. There's Raspberry Blitz, there's MyNode Basic. Raspberry Blitz is very, very good, but I think is certainly for a more technical user. MyNode arguably as well, although it is still quite user-friendly. Again though, in this case, I would do Umbrel. Now let's talk about the shell design. So you're able to choose between a couple different designs. There's the Lightning shell, which is going to look like this. Okay, that is a sort of Lightning shell. There is the MyNode shell, which is going to look like this. So this is the sort of default, and it's going to look like this. And then there's the Triton, which is going to look like this. And I mean, you can soup these up in a pretty cool way, right? You can, if you were interested in the Triton, you could come down and chuck some LED fans and the LED, stuff in there. Obviously, going to cost you extra, etc., etc. So have a think about what you'd want. I personally did the Lightning shell, and then you're able to choose your accent colors. So for example, if I were to select green here, that would correspond to the to this sort of red or orange color in this particular image. And then you do have the option to have an LCD screen if you're running a Raspberry Blitz. Okay, and so in our case, we would just select no, and it spits out the $5.99 price because we went with the 8 gigs. You can bump that down to 4, and you save $50 if you would so like. Now, you can also give your shell a name, and so I'll show you an example of that, of what I did with mine in just a moment. But you can, as you can see, I did Rager Major, and so it'll write that on the node. Again, kind of cool. And then if you want to customize the shell color, which the default of which is black, you can change that as well. And so in my case that I'm going to show you momentarily, I went with a white shell color and a red shell accent color. And that's it. Then you would add to cart. You can come down and see some of the additional information here. So what they are giving you is the Raspberry Pi, whatever you happen to choose. They're giving you a fan shim, which I was alluding to earlier. This is nice so that it keeps everything nice and cool. They're giving you a 32 gig SD card, which is going to have the Umbrel software already installed. So that's the important thing as well. Literally, once you receive this thing, you can just plug it into a wall. It'll boot up, and then within minutes, you should be able to access your Umbrel node at umbrel.local. So that's how this will go. It gives you the 1 terabyte SSD and the shell, of course, as well. All right, so now that we've covered that, let's talk finally about what this actually looks like once you receive it. All right, so here's Rager Major in all its glory. So this is what it will look like once you receive it from CryptoCloaks, depending on your customizations and all that. And so it's fully boxed, right? And you can kind of peer inside and you'll see there's the Raspberry Pi. You can sort of see some of the components there. There's the light, meaning that it's running. On the bottom is where the drive is. And so this will basically come already fully assembled. It will come with the connections here between the Raspberry Pi and the drive. So that's what this black cable is. And then it will come with an Ethernet cable that you'll simply plug into the Raspberry Pi there. And then that is being connected directly into my internet router down here. Okay. And then finally, you would simply plug the power cable in, as you can see here. And so that's it. I would recommend considering like a backup battery that it can flip over to if in case there's like a power outage that can mess with this and be a bit of a pain. But that is what it looks like. And so you'll literally receive this. You'll plug the power in. You'll plug the Ethernet cable in front and connect the node to your router. And then it will be booting for the first time. And so that could take 5 to 10 minutes, but once that happens, you should then be able to detect this in the umbrel.local URL that I will show now. All right, and so some of you will want to see what the actual Umbrel interface looks like. I'm not going to go through a super deep dive in this video. But I will just sort of point out, so this is what it looks like, right? You'll go to umbrel.local, and provided that your computer is on the same network as your internet router that you've connected your node into, it should be able to detect that. You'll apply you'll get your seed phrase, you'll apply a password, and then you will be able to access your dashboard. And so it's got everything. I'm synchronized. Once you do this for the first time, your node will have to synchronize the entire blockchain, which could take a couple days. And so just keep that in mind, and you'll see a synchronization status here. You've got your regular Bitcoin wallet. You've got your Lightning wallet. Everything's being relayed through Tor, which is great. And then you've got all sorts of different apps. You can connect different wallets to your node, which is critical, right? The whole point of a node is to be able to to become completely censorship resistant in terms of broadcasting transactions that you're making. I also need to upgrade, as we can see. So again, super quick little overview of Umbrel. I'm not going to go through all of this. I will do that in future videos, but this is what things will look like once you have it up and running. Pretty darn slick, and you know, feels pretty good to get this set up. All right, so there you have it. Just as a quick recap, we went through a high-level overview of Umbrel as the software for this node implementation. And we also went through CryptoCloaks for the hardware and assembly. We talked through some of the trade-offs, right? You could certainly save $100, maybe $200 if you go the kind of manual assembly route, which you could certainly do and still use Umbrel as your sort of software setup. There's, of course, many other software stacks as well. And so all of those things I'm going to be covering in future videos. But I think particularly if you're kind of a less technical user and are willing to pay a little bit more for the convenience of having this kind of prepackaged, you know, delivered right to you, this is, I think, unquestionably the option for you. And so I hope you found this video useful and valuable. If you did, you already know what to do. Give this video a like, comment down below with your thoughts, questions, reactions, you know, things you'd like to see covered in future videos. I really do take that into account when creating the video schedule for this channel. And as I mentioned at the outset, I have left an affiliate link in the description down below if you are so inclined on getting anything from CryptoCloaks. That really does support and help out the channel. But for now, we'll go ahead and leave this video here. As always, every sack counts. And until next time, I'll see you then.